Revealed. Millionaire receives flowers with a surprising note that changed everything. The fluorescent lights hummed above David Reynolds as he sat behind his sleek mahogany desk, the glow of his computer screen casting a bluish tint over the chaos of papers and half-drunk coffee mugs. Today was supposed to be triumphant. He had just finalized a lucrative contract that could escalate his tech company to new heights. But as the clock ticked away, an unsettling emptiness gnawed at him, the kind that wealth couldn't fill. Just as his resolve began to harden, a delivery interrupted his thoughts. An extravagant bouquet, vivid flowers bursting with life, accompanied by an envelope that felt strangely heavy in his grasp. Unfolding the note, his heart sank as he recognized the familiar handwriting, so distinct yet foreign after all these years. Dear David, I think of you often. I hope you're well. I am proud of your success, but I feel like I don't know you anymore. Mom. Those words, simple yet sharp, struck him like daggers piercing his carefully cultivated facade. A flood of memories crashed over him unbidden, family dinners where laughter echoed, and the warmth of his mother's embrace. Yet, ambition had seized him, leading him far away from them, from her. Before he could catch his breath, the internal struggle unfurled like a wildfire. Guilt swept through him. He had clawed his way to the top, yet here he was, staring at the specter of a mother crushed under the weight of disappointment. Did he trade love for success? An unmistakable tremor electrified his body, his mind racing through the stark contrast of his idyllic childhood against the sterile corporate world he had built. The palpable regret felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As David wrestled with his thoughts, the weight of the note felt heavier in his hands. The prospect of reaching out took form, how easy it could be to pick up the phone, to bridge that vast chasm of unspoken words and unhealed wounds. But the thought crumbled as a wave of fear crashed over him. What if she was right? What if he had truly lost himself in the relentless pursuit of success? A swell of anger surged up, followed closely by confusion. How could she pull at his heartstrings while criticizing his life choices? The spectrum of emotions was dizzying, causing his breath to hitch. Amidst this turmoil, David's thoughts were suddenly derailed by an urgent ping on his phone. His business partner, a man he had trusted beyond all else, had betrayed him. A financial crisis loomed, darker than any storm he had yet faced. The bitter taste of betrayal felt like acid in his mouth. It mirrored the cracks in his family's foundation, digging into the very source of his identity. Every wound, every regret, converged into a crucible of chaos. He had been striving for acceptance, for validation, yet all he felt now was vulnerability. An impossible choice lay ahead of him. Fight for the company that had become his lifeblood, or redirect his energy back to mending the broken relationship with his mother. The stakes had never been higher, the pressure insurmountable. His heart raced, caught between two worlds that demanded his loyalty. As the shadows of doubt crept in, simmering uncertainty loomed large. Would he forsake his ambition for family? The unanswered questions clouded his judgment, leaving him stranded on the edge of a precipice where desperation and longing collided violently. The answer hung in the air, a tense, unyielding knot that begged to be untangled, yet remained forever out of reach. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes of light across David's disarrayed office. The phone buzzed incessantly, yet he was paralyzed by the weight of indecision. The sharpness of his mother's words replayed relentlessly in his mind, mingling with the betrayal of his business partner. A reminder that nothing in his life was as solid as he had once believed. As he stared blankly at his computer screen, the glaring numbers of contracts and financial forecasts blurred into a haze. What did they mean if he couldn't share his achievements with loved ones? The question echoed, growing louder until it became impossible to ignore. He knew he had to act, not just for his business but for himself. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself to pick up the phone. Each buzz felt like a countdown to an uncertain future. With uncharacteristic hesitation, he scrolled through his contacts until his finger hovered over Mom. It was a simple act, yet the pounding in his chest froze him in place. The fear of rejection loomed larger than the threat of financial calamity. He thought about the last time they had spoken, how much ground had shifted beneath them since then. The chasm of silence that had grown between them felt insurmountable. Guilt, regret, and a lingering sense of duty wrestled for dominance, paralyzing him completely. Just as he was about to push the call button, his phone rang again. This time it was his top client. He answered, forcing himself to adopt a business-as-usual facade. As the conversation unfolded, he became acutely aware of the growing disinterest in superficial negotiations and the deeper need for authentic connections. The client's voice was reduced to background noise, a reminder of the hollow nature of transactions devoid of trust and empathy. When the call ended, David leaned back in his chair, breathing heavily. Mending his relationship with his mother suddenly felt more pressing than the reports stacking up around him. He realized he had a choice to make, one that demanded an equal balance of personal and professional risks. In a bold move fueled by a newfound resolve, he took a different path. He opened his email and composed a message to his team, announcing that he would be taking a brief hiatus. In it, he acknowledged the complexities unraveling within their company and promised to return with a clearer vision. As he hit send, a mix of liberation and fear washed over him. He was stepping away from the pursuits that had consumed him and losing himself in the process. With his heart racing, he pulled up his contacts again. He needed to confront the ghosts of his past and the mother who had invested so much in him. Finally, he pressed the call button. As it rang, each tone resonated like a heartbeat, a methodical reminder of what was to come. Voices clashed in his mind. The desire for success battled with the need for connection. She answered with her familiar tentative greeting, and in that moment, he realized the stakes were higher than mere business. It was about reclaiming a part of himself he had overlooked for too long. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Little did he know, this conversation would uncover not only the fractures in their relationship, but also unlock hidden truths about himself that would change everything he thought he knew about success and happiness. As they spoke, David was forced to confront a truth deep within him, a revelation he had long buried beneath ambition and achievement, a truth that could alter the trajectory of both his personal and professional life forever. The conversation unfolded slowly, each word laden with significance. David's heart raced as he grappled with his thoughts, trying to articulate the emotions he had buried beneath layers of professional ambition. How had they arrived at this point, where connection felt like a foreign concept? "I'm sorry for how things have been, Mom," he began, striving for sincerity. "I've been so caught up in work, I didn't mean for our relationship to suffer." Her hesitation lingered in the air, and he could sense her guarded response. "David, you've always been driven. I just wish—" She trailed off, the poignant silence speaking volumes. "Wish what?" David probed gently. The question bared his vulnerability, exposing a longing for reconciliation he had kept hidden under the guise of strength. "Wish you'd let us in. I felt so distant from you. You're always chasing something. But what?" Her tone softened, laced with concern. "I thought success would make you proud. I thought it would fill the void," David admitted, a tone of regret washing over him. "To be a success was my way of proving myself. To you. To everyone." The admission hung in the air, a heavy revelation of his self-imposed pressure. "Success isn't measured by money or contracts, David. It's about love, trust, and the people you allow into your life," she replied, her words penetrating the armor he had worn so long. At that moment, David felt a tug tugging at the fabric of his carefully constructed identity. His heart sank as the truth unfurled, elements of his life no longer fitting into the neat narrative he had created. Yes, he had built an impressive business, but the foundations had crumbled, fragile and hollow, devoid of the warmth of genuine relationships. "Mom, I need to figure this out," he exclaimed, the urgency in his voice rising. I can't keep pretending. But how? This isn't just a business problem, David. It's about you. You need to understand what truly makes you happy, she encouraged, a spark of hope flickering in her voice. As David listened, a potent mix of fear and determination coursed through him. He replayed his life, the relentless grind, the sacrifices made chasing digits on a screen. What had it all amounted to? It's time for some hard truths, she said softly, sensing the shift. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here, but you must be willing to confront not just the business, but yourself. He realized that this was more than just a conversation. It was a pivotal moment challenging everything he believed in. They were embarking on a path of reconnection, intertwining the threads of personal fulfillment and professional integrity. I want to change, he vowed, feeling the gears shift within himself. What if I take some time to explore what I truly want beyond work? Rediscover who I am? Absolutely. It's never too late, she replied, the tenderness in her voice igniting a fragile spark of hope within him. Closing the conversation, David sat back, contemplation washing over him like a cleansing tide. He felt the weight of silence begin to lift, revealing paths he had obscured in his pursuit of success. He had taken the first step, and for once, it felt right. But as he sat alone in the dim light of his office, another realization enveloped him. Honoring his true self would require more than reflection. It demanded bold actions. The time had come to face his fears head-on, to redefine what success meant and rebuild the foundations of his life from a place of authenticity. And yet, a lingering doubt shadowed him. What would he discover once he ventured down this uncharted path? As resolve began to settle in, David picked up his phone once more. This time the call was to an old mentor, a figure who had shaped his earlier dreams. The moment he dialed, he understood that this was merely the beginning of a deeper exploration into the facets of himself he had long neglected, a journey that would ultimately redefine his essence. What awaited him on the other end of the line? David paced back and forth in his office, the call still ringing in his ears. He had always revered Leonard, his former mentor, a figure who had once ignited his passion for entrepreneurship. Over the years, however, their connection had waned. David had submerged himself in the pursuits of success, losing the valuable insights Leonard had imparted. As the phone rang, he felt a nervous flutter in his stomach. It had been years since he last sought his guidance. What would he even say? He finally steeled himself, determined to be vulnerable. The moment Leonard picked up, David felt a mix of familiarity and trepidation. "David, it's been a while." Leonard's voice broke through the static, warm and welcoming. "Hi, Leonard," David replied, swallowing his anxiety. "I hope you're well. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about everything, really. I'd love to catch up." "You've been on my mind, too." "Now, what's this about?" Leonard prodded, a hint of curiosity seeping through. Taking a deep breath, David opened up about his recent conversation with his mother, emphasizing the unsettling revelations he had unearthed about himself. He articulated the growing disquiet within him surrounding their definition of success, shrouded in layers of ambition and disconnection. "That's quite a journey you're embarking on, David," Leonard responded thoughtfully. "You're bringing up the very essence of what it means to be fulfilled in both life and work. Do you think it's possible to change how I've built my career?" David questioned, gripping the edge of his desk tightly. "I can't help but feel like I've wasted so much time chasing the wrong things." "It's never too late to align your goals with your values," Leonard said firmly, a note of encouragement woven into his words. "In fact, I know it can feel overwhelming to redefine success, but think of it as an opportunity to explore your authentic self. Let's get back to your roots. What ignited your passion for business in the first place?" That question resonated deeply, the floodgates of memory thrust open as David recalled a time when every new project felt like an adventure. He spoke about the excitement of brainstorming ideas with Leonard and the spark of life in those early days of entrepreneurship. The energy, the creativity, the sheer joy of building something from nothing. Gradually, David began to shape a vision of who he wanted to become, a man who could integrate his ambition with genuine relationships and meaningful experiences. He was tentative, but felt the constraints of his anxiety begin to loosen with each passing moment. As their conversation deepened, Leonard shared insights he had gained from his own evolutions in life, emphasizing the importance of recalibrating goals in response to internal shifts in life events. David absorbed those lessons, each piece of advice seeming to settle into the expanse of his mind. Time slipped by unnoticed until David finally found the courage to ask the pivotal question. What if I wanted to shift my focus from growth and profit to something more impactful? How do you even begin to navigate that transition? Leonard paused, his silence pregnant with possibility. Start small. Identify what matters most to you now. What legacy do you want to leave behind? In the end, success isn't only about what you build. It's about the lives you touch along the way. David paused, processing the implications of Leonard's words. His mind raced with inspiration but also uncertainty. The ambiguity of untrodden paths loomed ahead, and though the road seemed steep, he was no longer paralyzed. He felt ignited with purpose. As the conversation wrapped up, David felt a renewed sense of direction unfolding before him. But even amidst the hope, he couldn't help but wrestle with an underlying fear. What if he discovered he was already too far gone? That flickering doubt sagged heavily on his shoulders as he hung up the phone. He had opened the door to change, yet the fear of the unknown loomed just outside. The struggle would be real, but the stakes had never felt more significant. As he began pacing his office again, something occurred to him. Understanding his true values would take more than just reflection. It would demand active engagement with not only his personal aspirations, but those he had hurt along the way, his mother, his friends, and even his former self. What would be the first step in that daunting journey? David stared out of his office window, the skyline painted in streaks of orange and pink. The vibrant colors felt almost like a promise of renewal, yet beneath that surface, a growing sense of urgency brewed within him. He had a vision now, one that blended ambition with authenticity. But how would he navigate this uncharted territory? His heart raced as he pondered the first steps. He decided to reach out to his mother. Their last interaction had been strained. His relentless drive for success had overshadowed any warmth in their relationship. The thought of reconnecting was daunting. How could he express his regrets and intentions without feeling exposed? The fear of rejection gnawed at him, yet he recognized it as a vital component of his transformation. After an agonizing internal debate, David reached for his phone. The act of dialing felt monumental. It was a signal that he was ready to rebuild. After a few rings, his mother answered, her voice cautious but familiar. "David?" "Hi, Mom," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "I've been thinking a lot about us and what I've put you through. I want to understand better how I've hurt you." Silence draped over the line like a heavy blanket before she replied, It's been hard watching you become so distant." Her honesty hit him squarely in the chest. Each word was a reminder of how far he had drifted. He knew this conversation would not be easy, but it was necessary. They talked candidly, about missed birthdays and empty holiday dinners, about how he had chased success at the expense of family. Each revelation felt like a brick being lifted off his shoulders, but it also highlighted the gaps his past actions had created. As they spoke, a strange sense of clarity emerged. David realized that the path he was forging was not just about altering professional goals but rekindling personal connections. The discomfort of truth-telling sparked something within him, a flicker of courage. Maybe his pursuit of impact began with mending these relationships. After hanging up, that conversation set a fire under his resolve. He turned to a blank sheet of paper on his desk. He needed a plan, a framework to integrate his values with actionable steps. He began scribbling down goals, but these weren't the typical targets of revenue growth or market expansion. Instead, they were about connection, mentorship, community involvement, and personal growth. He paused at the mention of mentorship, recalling Leonard's words, the importance of guiding others. He had cultivated a belief that success was a solitary endeavor, yet each encounter with Leonard unraveled that idea. It struck him that perhaps he could open his company to interns or young entrepreneurs, offering them insights not just into business, but into creating meaning in their pursuits. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a notification. A group chat from his former colleagues lit up the screen, discussing a new startup accelerator. The invitation was a familiar one, a call to the competitive realm he had once thrived in. Yet rather than feel the familiar need to jump in and compete, David felt an unexpected hesitation. Was this the kind of environment he wanted to cultivate, or did it contradict his newfound values? The urge to respond battled against the consideration of his recent realizations. He recognized that this was a turning point. Accepting opportunities that aligned with authenticity might be harder, but would yield a more profound personal satisfaction. He chose to remain silent in the chat for now, simmering in the uncertainty around that decision. David finally set down his pen, his vision beginning to crystallize into something tangible. He envisioned events that fostered networking for emerging entrepreneurs and workshops that encouraged personal growth alongside professional development. He was ready to craft not just a business but a legacy. As he stepped back and let the plans take shape, something deep within him stirred. Though fear lurked at the edges, determination became his anchor. But what if the real challenge lay ahead, where the execution of his ideals inevitably confronted old habits and external pressures? The ring of the phone broke his train of thought. A message flashed across the screen, disrupting his moment of reflection. "We need to talk." It was from Leonard. The stakes were rising, and he could feel the tensions tightening around him once more. What awaited him on the other side of this conversation? David took a deep breath, processing the weight of Leonard's message. The urgency in those 3 words echoed through his mind as he stared at the screen. He hadn't anticipated this. He thought he might face the ghosts of his past alone. Instead, here was a figure from his old life, a reminder of the high-stakes world he had been trying to escape. Pacing the room, he wrestled with the conflicting emotions. Leonard was not just an old colleague, he was a mentor, and in many ways, the personification of the drive David had so frantically embraced. But was that the drive he still wanted? Did he want to revert to the old ways of constant competition and ambition, or was this moment an opportunity to redefine what success meant to him? The phone buzzed again, a reminder that he had lingered too long in his thoughts. He typed back a simple acknowledgement. "Okay? When and where?" He spent the next few hours mentally preparing himself, recalling Leonard's unwavering belief in pushing boundaries. Yet each memory was now couched in a new context, the need for connection and authenticity. He had come to see mentorship not merely as a transaction for knowledge, but as a relationship built on trust and understanding. When the time came to meet, David chose a coffee shop that fostered open discussions. He arrived early, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air, mingling with the soothing hum of conversations. As he sat at a small table by the window, anticipation fluttered in his stomach. Leonard arrived, his presence commanding even in casual attire. They exchanged pleasantries, but there was an undercurrent of tension that neither could shake off. David couldn't help but notice how the lines on Leonard's forehead deepened as he spoke about current business trends and competitive strategies. "Looks like you've really been digging into your work," Leonard observed, studying David closely. "You know, this new accelerator is an incredible opportunity. I thought you'd want to jump back into the game." David hesitated, feeling a lump gather in his throat. "I've been thinking about that, but I'm not sure if the game is what I want anymore." Leonard leaned closer, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" "It's not just about growth numbers for me now," David admitted, gathering his courage. "I want to create something meaningful, something that helps others while also reflecting my values. I'm considering bringing in young talent, offering mentorship instead of just chasing profit." Leonard blinked, taken aback. "Mentorship? When did you become so altruistic?" There was a hint of sarcasm in his tone, but also genuine curiosity. "I had some realizations recently about what truly matters. I don't want to just build a company, I want to build connections," David replied, nervously assessing Leonard's reaction. But instead of the enthusiasm David hoped for, Leonard's expression shifted to skepticism. "That's noble, David, but in this industry, empathetic business models can be naive. You can't forget that every move you make will be watched, critiqued, and measured against competitors who don't share your values. David's stomach churned at Leonard's words. It seemed that the very ideals he wished to espouse were being brushed aside in the name of survival. Yet deeper issues flared within him. Was he naive, or was he finally facing the truth about who he wanted to be? As Leonard pressed further, David felt the strain of resisting the pull of his old ambition while standing firm in his evolving values. The conversation shifted, tension thickening the air. There was a challenge in Leonard's tone, one that left David teetering on the edge of panic. Would he have to fight to justify his choices, or could he stand strong in the face of opposition? Before he could respond, Leonard glanced at his watch and abruptly said, "Think about it, David. Sometimes you have to play the game to change it." The remark hung in the air as he stood up, leaving David to grapple with the implication. As the door swung shut behind Leonard, a simmering realization dawned on him. To dive into the new world he was envisioning meant risking old relationships that thrived on competition. What would he ultimately choose? The phone buzzed again in his pocket, another reminder that decisions loomed closer than he anticipated. This time, it was a message from an unknown number, and the words illuminated a path he hadn't considered yet. "We need to talk. I have an opportunity that could change everything." Who was this stranger, and what kind of opportunity awaited him? An eerie stillness blanketed David as he stared at his phone, the message from the unknown number pulsating with potential. The quiver of excitement that ignited within him clashed violently with the trepidation pulling at his insides. Was this a continuation of the tumult he had just faced with Leonard? Part of him felt drawn towards the mystery, while the other part screamed caution, tethered to the promises of stability he had recently embraced. Analyzing his own reaction, David recognized the duality at play within him. He thrived on the adrenaline of uncertainty, yet simultaneously craved a life cultivated on intentionality and connection. The crossroads presented was not just a choice about accepting a meeting. It was a direct confrontation with who he wanted to become. He quickly dismissed his instinct to ignore the message. Instead, he took a moment, letting the coffee shop's ambient chatter ground him. The muffled overlapping conversations echoed an often sought harmony, people discussing dreams, collaborations, and ambitions. Perhaps he too deserved a chance to explore uncharted possibilities, without the nagging fear of disappointment. Rolling his shoulders back, David decided to respond. "I'm listening," he typed, pressing send before he could overthink it. The small thrill that accompanied this impulsive decision lingered as he waited for a reply. Minutes dragged, each tick of the clock intensifying his anticipation. What did this stranger want? Was this opportunity risky or merely a distraction? He thought of Leonard's speech. Was he going to succumb to the idea of competition, or craft a new path centered on his growing awareness of mentorship? The stakes grew higher each moment. Finally, a response chimed through, and his heart raced as he read the text. "Meet me at the Grove Cafe in an hour. It's worth your time." The Grove Cafe was a famed spot, blending casual interactions with a conducive environment for networking. He had visited it countless times, but the thought of returning now ignited a new kind of anxiety. Would he have to perform again, faking his way through dialogues about metrics and success when he felt newly awakened in his priorities? Upon arriving, David took a moment to center himself, breathing in the scent of freshly toasted bread mingling with hints of espresso. Each mouthful of emotion he swallowed was countered by the determination that he wouldn't allow this meeting to slip into the shadows of his past pursuits. He would approach it with curiosity at the forefront, aware that his values must not bend to fit a mold. Soon enough, a figure emerged through the door. It was a woman, her confident stride immediately capturing his attention. Thick, curly hair framed her face, and as she scanned the room, a smile broke forth that suggested an ease in her presence. She spotted David and approached, outstretching her hand. "David, I presume?" she said, her smile warm yet penetrating. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Mia," she introduced herself, shaking his hand firmly, an unspoken challenge embedded within her grip. "I've been following your work, and I think you're ready for something transformative." David's heartbeat quickened again, not from fear, but from the thrill of potential. "What kind of transformation?" Mia gestured for him to sit, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as she launched into a bold pitch. She spoke of a project designed to integrate technology with community welfare, a concept merging profits with purpose, a concept David had yearned for but hadn't yet envisioned. As she recounted her plans, David found himself leaning closer, drawn not only by the project itself but by Mia's infectious passion. She wasn't just selling him on an opportunity. She was inviting him into a dream, a roadmap to redefine success. Yet, something whispered in the back of his mind, reminding him of the precautions Leonard had instilled, the warnings of vulnerability in an unforgiving industry. Could he navigate the fine line between ambition and safeguard? This moment felt prophetic, laden with the weight of his previous encounters, and the question lodged within his mind ignited a familiar tension. "Why me?" David interrupted, summoning the courage to probe deeper. Uncertainty churned within him, demanding answers while cradling the potential of his own journey. Mia leaned in, her gaze unwavering. "Because I see who you're becoming, and I believe the path you want is not only possible, it's necessary." His resolve solidified with her words. But as Mia continued to lay out her vision, David couldn't shake the looming question. Was he ready to merge his newfound values with the intensity of ambition? As their conversation unfolded, David found himself at yet another crossroad. The allure of a partnership was tempting, but it also posed unparalleled risks that could unearth the ghosts he thought he had left behind. He needed to decide. Was this the opportunity to claim his future, or was it yet another diversion leading him back to chaos? The moment of truth loomed ahead. Both the excitement and fear intertwining within him begot a tense atmosphere, leaving David wrestling with the answer to that all-important question. Would he take the leap? David stared at Mia, his mind a whirlpool of conflicting thoughts as she detailed her ambitious project. Each point she made seemed to resonate, striking chords within him that had lain dormant for far too long. Yet the nagging whisper of doubt crept in, taunting him with memories of past failures and unfulfilled dreams. "What if this doesn't work?" he blurted out, the vulnerability of the question hanging between them like a charged wire. It was a stark contrast to the meticulously constructed confidence he often wore like armor in professional settings. Mia's smile softened, and she leaned back slightly, considering his concern. "Every opportunity comes with risks, David. But what I see in you is a potential that hasn't yet surfaced. You want to make an impact, and this project could be your vehicle for that." Her response caused a flicker of determination to ignite within him. David's life had been riddled with decisions made out of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of stepping outside the prescribed boundaries. His work with Leonard had become a coping mechanism, shielding himself from the need to reach for something greater. But now, confronted with Mia's vision, a part of him longed to break free from that self-imposed prison. "I've been working in my comfort zone," he admitted, his voice low but steady, "focusing on metrics and projections, but I want to be more than just numbers." "Then seize this chance," Mia encouraged, her intensity electrifying the space around them. "The numbers don't define your legacy. Your legacy is defined by the impact you create. Together, we can redefine what success looks like." David's heart raced. He calculated the potential outcomes, enjoying the rush it brought while grappling with the weight of the decision. Boldness felt like an exhilarating drug, but the fear of disappointment clung to him like an unwelcome shadow. "What if it fails?" he asked, pressing for deeper clarity, digging for reassurance in the unforgiving soil of his fears. Mia paused, her expression thoughtful. "Failure is merely a stepping stone, David. Every successful venture has its failures. It's how we learn and grow. Think of it this way. What happens if you never try? Isn't living in stagnation much worse?" The truth of her words struck him fiercely. What had been worse? Taking the leap or remaining in a situation that no longer served him? David felt like he was at the precipice of understanding, teetering on the edge of choice. He was well aware of the dangers that lay ahead, and the prospect didn't terrify him. In fact, it exhilarated him more than he had anticipated. As Mia sketched out further details of her proposal, David's internal dialogue shifted. He envisioned not just a career move, but a transformative journey that demanded he confront his own fears, He pictured the ripple of change he could inspire, not merely within the industry but within himself, solidifying his identity as a professional who thrived on purpose rather than pure ambition. He soon realized that this meeting wasn't merely about the project. It was a test of his readiness to embrace vulnerability and commit to a path of personal growth, one that went hand in hand with the responsibilities of leadership and innovation. He yearned to merge his aspirations with his newfound values, reimagining success as a tapestry, woven with intent and connection. "All right," he said finally, a newfound determination punctuating his voice. "Let's explore this together." The words escaped him, carrying with them the weight of his decision. He was ready to forge a new path. As they began discussing next steps, David felt a surge of excitement, but alongside it lay a twinge of apprehension. This partnership could lead to greatness, or it could unravel into chaos, a reflection of his past. But the possibility of succeeding, of boldly crafting his future, ignited a passion he hadn't felt in years. He would confront the ghosts of his limitations head-on, welcoming them into the light of his burgeoning ambition. As the meeting continued, David sensed the invisible chains of self-doubt loosening, his resolve crystallizing with each word exchanged. Yet, as he left the Grove Cafe, a new question gnawed at him. How would he balance the demands of this opportunity against the challenges of maintaining his values in a world that often chewed up and spat out the idealistic? The weight of that question lingered, promising a test of his commitment and integrity in the days to come. David had taken the leap, but he also understood that the journey was just beginning. Would his newfound vision withstand the turbulence ahead? David walked down the sunlit street, the warmth bathing his skin while the pulse of uncertainty raced in his veins. Each step felt like a beat in a symphony of self-discovery, where every note resonated louder than the last. He fought to focus his thoughts, drowning out the persistent echoes of doubt that threatened to drown him once more. As he approached his office building, the familiar facade felt alien, the corporate identity he had known for years now contrasting sharply with the possibilities he had glimpsed with Mia. He recalled her words. Every opportunity comes with risks. What risk was greater, to remain stagnant or to leap into the unknown? The answer clawed at him, each choice stark and unforgiving. Inside, David settled at his desk, but the usual hum of productivity felt stifled. He stared at his computer screen, an elaborate map of numbers and analytics that had once excited him. The metrics that defined his career suddenly felt like a prison. He imagined them falling away, leaving only the raw potential of an idea that could change lives. The dissonance brewed within him, a challenge to wrestle with the obligations of his current role while nurturing the inspired vision ignited by Mia. As he sifted through emails, he spotted a message from Leonard, his boss. The subject line, Q3 health check, made his heart sink. He recognized it as the routine inquiry Leonard made to assess progress. Routine, a word that could easily become an epithet suffocating creativity. David felt the tension build, torn between his duties and his dreams. Would Leonard support his desire to innovate, or would he represent the very voice of skepticism he longed to escape? Determined not to shy away, David crafted a response. He laid out the benefits of adopting more progressive initiatives, referencing Mia's project. He hesitated for a moment before hitting send, pondering how Leonard might react. Would he stifle David's burgeoning creativity? With his finger poised over the mouse, David took a deep breath, realizing this small digital act mirrored greater changes unfolding within him. The hours dragged on, and as the clock inched toward quitting time, an email notification blinked across his screen. It was Leonard's reply. David's heart raced as he opened it, bracing himself for resistance. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, David, we must stay focused on our current commitments. New projects require significant resource allocation, and I am not convinced that this is the right direction. Let's discuss this further at our next one-on-one. A cold wave washed over him. The defeated body language he had learned to hide crept back, but rather than allowing despair to reclaim its throne, anger flared. Was he just another cog in Leonard's machine? He realized in that moment that he held the reins of his future. But could he confront Leonard without jeopardizing his current standing? David stood up, breathing deeply, unsettled yet resolute. Now was the time to frame this challenge as an opportunity, not to lose his composure, but to strategize. What could he bring to this conversation that would disrupt Leonard's monochromatic view of the world? He spent the evening sketching ideas, envisioning a blend of analytics and innovation that could appeal to Leonard. He would present a case not just for the project, but as a shift in mindset. He needed to demonstrate that numbers could serve a larger vision, a vision that accounted not merely for profits but for purpose. The weight of his ambition pressed upon him while he navigated through potential scenarios, questioning how he might present his ideas. Would Leonard embrace this change, or would he double down on the past? The stakes were escalating, and with each passing moment, David realized the battle within himself was far from over. He would have to face Leonard's skepticism head-on. It was a confrontation that could redefine not just his career, but his entire narrative. As he plotted his strategy, new questions surfaced, demanding his attention. How much risk was he willing to take? Would he compromise his values to win approval? The prospect of the meeting loomed, promising to test not just his professional resolve, but his moral compass. The night felt electric with possibility, and as he closed his notebook, one thought stood out. Would he have the courage to challenge not just Leonard, but the limits he had imposed on himself? With the dawn approaching, David knew the moment to confront his reality and reshape his vision was fast approaching. How would he respond when the moment of truth arrived? The following weeks felt like a whirlwind, each day consumed by the anticipation of his upcoming meeting with Leonard. David poured himself into preparing a comprehensive strategy, meticulously outlining the potential benefits of integrating Mia's vision of impactful entrepreneurship into their company's framework. Yet, despite the clarity of his ideas, doubt lurked in the corners of his mind. Would Leonard truly be receptive to this radical shift? At the brink of the meeting, David sat nervously in Leonard's office, the polished decor only amplifying the tension in the air. The familiar sight of the mahogany desk felt all at once comforting and intimidating, a reminder of the hierarchical structure he had known for years. "David, good to see you," Leonard greeted, his expression a blend of warmth and professional detachment. As they engaged in small talk, David scrutinized Leonard, gauging his mood while mentally rehearsing his opening words. With the pleasantries behind them, Leonard glanced at him expectantly. "So, what did you want to discuss?" David took a deep breath, summoning the courage he had cultivated over the past weeks. "I believe we need to embrace a new direction, Leonard, one that aligns with the changing landscape of entrepreneurship and prioritizes meaningful impact alongside profit." Leonard's brow furrowed slightly, the skepticism creeping back in. "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" David launched into his presentation, outlining how the integration of mentorship and community-driven initiatives could redefine their corporate identity. He shared insights from his talks with Mia, emphasizing the potential for greater employee engagement, stakeholder interest, and ultimately, enhanced profitability through purpose-driven work. As he spoke, he witnessed the slow shift of Leonard's expression from disinterest to intrigue. Yet, there was still a palpable hesitance in the air, a reluctance to embrace the unknown. "I appreciate your passion, David, but isn't this risky?" "Our current model has been successful," Leonard challenged, quickly reverting to a defensive stance, echoing a fear David had come to recognize as a symptom of his own past. "Success measured solely by profit is outdated," David asserted, letting confidence wash over him. Although a twinge of anxiety twisted in his gut, he pressed on. "We have an opportunity to be pioneers, to lead the industry in a new direction that values relationships over mere transactions. By investing in our people, we stand to create a cycle of loyalty and innovation that far outweighs risk." Leonard studied him carefully, the silence stretching like an audible echo. David's heart raced, his vulnerability laid bare before the man who symbolized the old order he wished to dismantle. "What makes you so certain it will work?" Leonard finally asked, raising an eyebrow. David leaned forward, every word weighing heavy with conviction. "Because I've felt the void that comes from chasing metrics alone. Success is no longer just about numbers, it's about redefining what fulfillment means. And that shift, Leonard, begins with us embracing the value of authentic connection." As soon as the sentence escaped his lips, he felt as if he had thrown off a tremendous weight. In that moment of honesty, he solidified the connection between his personal and professional awakening. After what felt like an eternity, Leonard finally nodded slowly. "I see where you're coming from. It's just uncharted territory for us, David. We'd need data, metrics to back this up. Perhaps a pilot project?" The tension in the room evaporated, replaced by a newfound energy. "Yes, we can start small, a mentorship program paired with community outreach initiatives. Let's gather data on engagement and productivity to measure the impact, and then scale from there." David's heart surged with exhilaration. He had made an imprint, disrupted the status quo. Leonard might not be fully convinced yet, but the chasm between their perspectives began to narrow. They discussed the pilot initiative at length, crafting a collaborative approach that married David's vision with Leonard's adherence to results. As they wrapped up the meeting, David felt alive with purpose, a stark contrast to the empty, hollow success he had felt for so long. Recognizing the shift within himself, he understood this moment wasn't merely a professional milestone. It marked an inner transformation, a reclamation of his values and aspirations. Weeks later, as the first session of the new mentorship program unfolded, David stood before a group of eager participants, a mix of young talent and seasoned employees. He could feel the spark in the room, the potential bubbling just beneath the surface. The walls he had once erected around himself began to fade, replaced by authentic conversations about aspirations, dreams, and the value of shared experiences. With each session, a deep-seated satisfaction anchored itself within him, a realization that he was no longer merely a cog in a corporate machine. He was shaping lives, fostering connections, and rekindling the passion that had initially ignited his love for entrepreneurship. As the program blossomed, David received recognition not just from the company, but from professionals across the industry. Articles featured his transformation, lauding the blend of success and sincerity he embodied. Opportunities began to arise, a speaking engagement, invitations to collaborate on community-focused projects. In the quiet moments, he reflected on how far he had come. The vibrant energy he had once conflated with ruthless ambition was now directed towards community enrichment and human connection. He stood firm, no longer confined to the narrative dictated by others. On a sunlit morning, David received another message from his mother, a simple text filled with love and an invitation for lunch. This time, he responded with enthusiasm, aware that the journey he embarked on was not just a professional rebirth, but a personal renaissance, intertwined with the healing of familial bonds. David wasn't merely rebuilding his career, he was redefining what success meant, emerging as a leader whose identity was anchored in authenticity, a testament that personal growth bridges the gap between ambition and meaningful legacy. Now, he stood at a crossroads, not just having found his way back to who he truly was, but venturing forward with purpose, empowered to illuminate a path for others to follow. This was his moment to shine, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, he embraced the journey ahead with an open heart, determined to make waves in a world craving genuine connection and purpose. This transformation was just the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.